All right, guys. My name is Dr. Sharnael Wolverton Sehon. I am with Swiftfire International, and I'm super freaking excited tonight because I have a new author that I'm excited about. His name is Brooks A. Agnew. And for those of you who know me, I'm a naturopathic doctor, as you know, but I'm also a freaking science geek, and I love space. And some of you guys know my story of some of the things that I've been part of from the beginning of time, with my dad being in the military and some of the projects I was a part of. And I actually went to a bookstore before this whole thing went down, and this literally jumped off out of the shelf and landed on the ground. And what caught my eye were two things. Is number one, this symbol is like really important to me for a lot of reasons, but also I liked his terminology because he says his title is called Remembering the Future. And my book is actually called The Science of Miracles, Remembering the Frequency of Love. And I am very much a stickler for conscious language and the whole concept of remembering, meaning not just remembering, but to meaning do again, member and or stay as a member, not just in our mind, body, and spirit, but also as a collective with all of who we are and how we're connected in the Schumann and that field and just all of that. So got his book, started reading, and I have so many things underlined, and there are a lot of different parallels to some of the things that I've taught over the last couple decades. And then after that, we have, it seems like we have, I tried to find you on, I didn't find you at first, but I saw you on an interview with Laura Eisenhower, who's a friend of mine. And I was like, what? They know each other? And, you know, I contacted Laura, and Laura and I have been friends for a few years. And then I saw you on Facebook with this interview. So I was like looking, and I'm like, he's written 11 books. What? I'm going to have to get all these books. And just kind of started stalking you a little bit because I'm all about, you know, all the things that you're talking about. You're a physicist. I love quantum physics. Like all of these things, I am just totally on board. So I was just, I reached out. I know we have a lot of mutual people that we know, and I kept going like, oh, and he knows him, and they know them, and he probably knows these people. And like, we just have, it's interesting how it's like a big world, universe, galaxies, and also, you know, when the frequency lines up, then we find each other, and that's just really cool. So thank you for taking time and actually saying yes to jumping on board and being with us tonight.
Wow, thank you for picking the book up off the floor. That's good.
Yeah.
I
So you
appreciate
have
the opportunity.
11 of these books, not exactly this one, but I would really like to talk specifically a little bit about this one.
Sure.
And kind of where this concept came from, what's your idea on physics of the soul and time travel, and kind of just see where this goes. I also would like to talk about where we're at, because I've seen you have a radio show, and you're talking about a lot of topics that I'm talking about. So I'd like to pick your brain on some of that too. So go for it.
I like all kinds of questions. Well, the book Remembering the Future was written in 2007. I started studying Flower of Life meditation with Drew and Melchizedek, and I began to practice the meditation. And one of the things that he taught us to do was to create this kind of landing place, a regular place that you go to when you go into meditation. Then you can go out from there. And I was in that state of meditation and said, well, I'm just going to travel to the future. I'm going to go out to the future and see what it looks like. So I went out to what I expected to be 2015. And when I opened my eyes in the year 2015, everything was a mess. The weather was messed up. The economy was collapsing. The presidency itself was collapsing. It wasn't anything like what it was in 2007. Everything was a mess. And I got kind of disoriented and kind of panicked. So I came back to 2007 and I thought to myself, first of all, I bring this memory back from the future and I didn't really like what I saw. So I felt like I was empowered to choose a new future. And all of these ideas began to come to me, like maybe the future is not scripted. Maybe there are lots of futures and different people in different times are shown futures, and maybe or maybe not they're empowered to share those futures with others, and maybe they can choose another future. And it has happened a few times in history. I recall the revolution of 1776. There is no prediction anywhere in any scripture, not Sanskrit, not Latin, not Greek, nowhere is there predicted America. Nothing like what this country is. This was a vision that the founding fathers had of a new future. They wanted to walk away from the global syndicate, I called them, and form a new country. So we're kind of on a new timeline. So I went on a new timeline, and I really didn't like what I saw. So I thought, well, what can I do? I'm just a dumb old engineer. What can I do? So I decided to write this book in an effort to maybe awaken enough people about the skill of going to the future and choosing a new one, that we could change the average reality and we could just miss that future in 2015. I had 8 years to do it. So as it turns out, about 20 million people heard that story. I went on coast to coast several times, and I went on tour around the world and spoke about it. And lots and lots and lots of people learned the skills in that book. And lo and behold, we got to the year 2015, late 2015, and it looked like we were going to miss it. And it also looked like it's going to end up just the way I had seen it. And then 2016 happened, and it seemed like a near miss. We just missed a direct collision with a terrible future. And now we're on this new timeline. So from that time until now, it's been about 5 years, I've really been pushing the book in a more public way. I've gone and developed a much better public presentation, and I've given it about 40 times live, I guess, and I'll give it a few more times as we come out of this lockdown. I've got a few more dates scheduled around the world to give that lecture, and then I also give the class once a month on a webinar that I give off my website, and that's live too. So one by one, people are learning these skills, and it allows people to take advantage of the one skill that humans have that I don't think any other creature on the face of the earth has. And that is that we can perceive time. I may be whales and dolphins. I don't know. I haven't spoken to any lately. But as far as any other creature on the face of the earth, we're the only ones that can perceive time. We can reflect on the past and make alterations with the way we're affected or other people are affected by it. But we can definitely envision futures, and we can make those futures happen by using our human energy, our soul energy, as a resonant force, and then listening for those things in the universe that are vibrating with that frequency, and then put energy into those sympathetic points so that those will resonate back to the future and manifest our idea. A lot of people have missed that. They think that you just go out there and hit that bell over and over. Every time you open the fridge, you look at that picture on the door of the fridge and just do it every single day. And eventually you're going to get what you wish. And it just doesn't happen, because that's just one tone. What you have to listen for is everything in the present that is vibrating with the frequency sympathetically and harmonically with your idea from the future, because that vibration goes out through all time and eternity, and it will come back to the present, which is the past, and you can do something about it by adding energy to it, and that goes right back to the future and makes that idea manifest. So that's where that came from.
Which is probably the concept for the whole loop-de-loop here, which I really love. I guess I haven't got to the part about the timeline, so I'm excited about that because I had no idea that was in there. And the reason why this book came out was because I woke up to seeing a timeline and seeing about, and I didn't have any physical knowledge or valid, anything valid to even understand what I'm saying, but I was shown, how we're at a certain point and we could go out to the future, but many times we, like our goals and our programming is to go from A to B, A to B, A to B, A to B.
Mm-hmm.
And because if we're only focused on getting to B, then the energy of getting to B is like in between still, right?
Well,
And
yeah,
so,
a lot of people
yeah,
do think of time in a linear fashion, like a
yeah,
line, and it
yeah,
isn't. It's spherical,
yes,
so being spherical, it's a square root function, and it's a different way of
yes.
thinking.
Yeah, and just for me too, I thought about on the energy level, because if you only get what you are, and so if our focus is on getting to be, I mean, talking about the programming from little kid, getting good grades, making cheerleader, doing all the things, it's like, just get to that thing, just get that job, just get that husband or wife, or, do the kids and get the car. If that's the focus, and or just getting to the next thing, then you're always in the energy of getting to, but not being. And so what I was shown is, why don't you go further into the C, D, E, F, G, H, I, whatever out there like you did. You went however many years and said, well, now that this has already happened, what's new and different for me, and align my energy with the relief and excitement and whatever the feelings are that come with that image that I had. And then we called that what's the wave, that not the echo wave, but the forward wave, an offering wave. And then it came back to the echo wave, but it came back to like, well, is she really serious? Is this where she is? And maybe even going genetically back to the timeline before and going, well, grandpa didn't believe he could do it. And that last time she tried this, it didn't work. And all of those snags that keep us from really hitting the mark. But anyway, yes, not linear, but just for the sake of explaining this part anyway, I started doing this envisioning of just like, well, what if we went out there and said, now that I'm already here, what's new and different for me, stayed in that and focused on not the B, but on the way out here as if it happened. And that's when we were seeing miracle, 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 miracle. And that's when I really started realizing the timelines, like you said, we're in a timeline war right now, because there isn't an official timeline that everyone's going to stay at. And I mean, our will is included in this, and our will is 400,000 times stronger than our spirit. So the timeline keeps changing, because any choice that we make changes that timeline, and we can change our own timelines. And as a collective, that's exactly where we're at right now, and why we're in this situation, because we got one group that wants one thing and one group that supposedly wants one thing, and then there's a whole other group that doesn't even know like anything's happening. It's like, where are we, right?
Well, I tried to explain this from a physics point of view in the book, and I try to make it simple in that the universe is just the sum or a result of all the sentient beings in it. So there's an average reality that we all experience. But we have to understand, we're not all the same. Ever since we were created in the original I am moment, we have been changing, we have been growing, and we've been using those several forms of memory you talked about, star memory and molecular memory or genetic memory, and also light memory. All of these forms of memory are ways in which we pick up thoughts and energies and ideas from the past and from the future. Some people that just kind of washes through them and it doesn't make any, legible sound at all. But once you become trained at listening, then you can hear individual themes in that music. Now, the fact that we're a normal distribution, that is to say, kind of a bell curve, you're talking about all these timelines that you can sense. You could really sense them when you get out in the tail areas of the bell curve, the real thin areas of the bell curve. You have the real low frequency side that's 3 or 4 sigma off of the average on the dark side. And you have the very bright side that is 3 or 4 sigma way up in the tail conditions of the high frequency. This is where a lot of vibrations are noticeable by souls who tend to go out there. You can distinguish because the population is very small. I would say collectively, I don't like to use the word collective, but collectively we are aware of one another, and we're also aware that there are not many of us here. I mean, there are a lot of souls on the earth, over 7 billion of us, but as far as people who are aware and awake and recognize that they are an individual intelligence, timeless, having a mortal experience, the number is very small. And when you realize that, you begin to sense all these vibrations. And it's not just listening, you can also make them. When you make those vibrations, one of two things happens to energy in wave form. It either constructively interferes or it destructively interferes. Now, it doesn't take much of an observation to see there's a lot of destructive interference going on right now, which is why it's really important to have a constructive interference energy out there, because out of this noise, out of this chaos is going to come a new timeline. And those of us that are awake and aware and powerful are the ones that are going to direct that timeline.
Wow. That is, I'm thinking of, our power to create and our ability to be aware of the timelines, and this being an internal, awakening for so many people. I think that regardless of how many people, I think that more people are waking up than they ever have been. And if we could also wake up to the fact that we're creators. I like how you said in the beginning, we're not just hitting the bell. The way I say it too, in addition, would be, I think everyone just gets up, does the thing, and they think that things are happening to them when they're not realizing that they're actually creating this and that they can create themselves out of this. And, as a doctor, I work with people who, may have a different dis-ease or something that's going on. And I'm like, the good news is, the bad news is you did this, you created it. So let's figure out what the root cause is, because the good news is you can get yourself out of it. Like if you're powerful enough to get here and you can actually accept that you did this, then you can also change things and turn it around. And it doesn't have to be a long time, because there is no time. This can be instant, based on your belief system. If you think it's going to be a long time and you decree that and state that, and that's your belief, then, that could be years. Well, then it's going to be years. That could be instant if that's your belief, and the word imagination is, I love that word, because to image a nation, or in this case, galaxies and the cosmos and our nation and our world. And anyway.
Well, in the book, I developed this over a period of years, and I really didn't realize how profound it was going to be until I drew it in 3D. And I tried to put the 3D image in the book, and you can kind of see it. But time is not linear. It's more like a funnel. I call it a time funnel. In fact, we exist in an immeasurable moment called now. I mean, I say immeasurable. We're not even sure if now exists, because we don't know how fast it goes. We don't know where it's located, but we're aware of it. So it's in the skinny part of the neck of the funnel, right before the funnel begins to expand. So behind us is the tube of the funnel. It's not a straight line. It's a tube. So we've got some lateral movement we can make in there. Immediately in front of us, it's a little wider. It's kind of opening up a little bit. And that's because of the choices that we've made so far in our lives. Whether we decided to go to college or get married or, invest or get a better education, all those choices that we made in the past sort of limit what we can do in the immediate future. But after that, it opens up to what I call the potential of all potentialities. Then you can be and do anything, literally anything you can imagine. Of course, I encourage people, it's sort of like hang gliding. When you jump off the cliff, you're out there in the air with nothing but you and the kite. You want to make sure you have a big landing place. I mean, if you're really skillful, maybe you could land in the passenger side of that Corvette on the freeway. It only has one seat and it's going 80 miles an hour. It's going to be a rare shot. I would much rather live or land in a baseball diamond, something big where lots of people could make it. That doesn't mean set your bar too low, but for instance, if you aspire to be president of the United States, realize there's only one chair and there's a lot of people want to be in that chair. So it's going to be tough to land there. But if you wanted to be a congressman, or you wanted to be a city councilman, or you wanted to be a teacher or a doctor or a lawyer, that's a big field and it's totally achievable by every single person out there.
Yeah, and going back to even what you were saying about that percentage of people who are awake, because of the timeline situation too, and the agendas, in order to even be awake in this day and age could be an issue between having, the food source, GMOs, nano stuff, all the AI stuff, chemtrails, the water's polluted, definitely the programming, the music, the Hollywood industry. I mean, there's so many different things, even in the school system, what have you. I mean, we could go all day about what can be counter for us to even be connected to our pineal gland to even do anything. But what would you say to someone who you're trying to talk to and get them to connect and to wake up and to see, kind of what's going on here?
Well, waking up is the easy part. Sometimes overcoming the shock of waking up, that's another thing entirely. But you got to remember, you're going to be vibrating at a different frequency. And, it says in the scriptures that the light will be present and the darkness won't comprehend it. What that basically means is you're not resonating with darkness anymore. So, I mean, AI, I laugh at AI. I mess with AI. I don't resonate with any of the dark side at all. I strive to stay in the light. And in doing so, it's sort of like driving fast on the freeway. That's what I describe it like in the book. If you drive fast on the freeway, I mean, really fast, like 120 miles an hour, the other cars are standing still. They're moving, but you're moving in between them like they're pylons. And that's what it's like when you vibrate at a higher frequency. None of these trappings that they're trying to weigh you down with, Hollywood, bad music, bad narratives in the news or whatever, none of that's going to affect you because they're not going to be aware of you. You're going to be moving in between all of those things.
Wow. So the sovereignty of all that, of whether it's being above or below or in between or whatever. So what are steps that you would suggest to even get there, to be sovereign?
The biggest thing is the memory, not just remembering the future, but also remembering who you are. And that doesn't mean, remembering your childhood in the last, few decades. I mean, before that, who you were as a light being, who you were, maybe you weren't even on this world. Maybe you were on another world. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to remember the individual lives, but you can remember the skills that you bring forward with you, things that you had when you got here, things that are innate to you. That's what you can start with, and then you can add to it from there. I didn't start writing books until I was 52 years old, and now I'm on my 12th book.
Wow, that's amazing. And I'm sure, so that was a part of your wake up, is just you're getting information and you're getting it out. I mean, you're just inspired and get it out.
Well, I think there were a couple of wake ups. There was one when I was almost 10 years old, and that changed my grade school life altogether. I was in college by the time I was 12. But then I kind of went back to sleep again. I got wrapped up in, teenage life, I guess. And I went back to sleep. I kind of woke up again at 19, took another look at it, started meditating again, but I went back to sleep again. And I didn't wake up really until I was about 47 years old when I met my co-author, and she challenged me to help her write a book called The Ark of Millions of Years. It turned out to be the first volume of 4. It took us 4 years to write it because we had to get all the information together. We studied 44 ancient cultures, and I did the physics side. She did the archaeology side. And when we
Wow.
finished the book, it was pretty close to 500 pages. Honestly, I didn't think anyone would buy it. I thought this is really interesting to us, but nobody cares about this stuff, EJ. And lo and behold, it hit the market, and 3 months later, it was number 38 on Barnes & Noble, and we made some money on that book. I got some interviews out of it, and the rest is history. We wrote the 4 books of Ark of Millions of Years, about 2,000 pages, and then, wrote 8 more books after that.
Wow. Yeah. It's for me hearing that you would think people aren't interested when this is like all I'm interested in. I guess it's just the frequency, but and then the people that I work with, I mean, my following for the last 2 decades, like we're just like anything new, like let's learn some more stuff. We're just so hungry for anything. But I had mentioned a little bit about some of my history too. My dad was military, and I was in Montauk, and part of some of the Montauk things that happened over there. And then, and I'm still processing all of that. And, I started getting some memories in 10th. Well, I knew what was going on when it was happening and tried to talk to people about it. And then it kind of just like put it down, and, they slate you and all that mess. And so started having trickling things, and then having some real life things that were really physically happening when they come back and check on you and do all these things. But part of that had to do with the chair, timelines, going out in different parallel space stuff, Project Looking Glass, which, again, I'm sure they're using it in multiple ways and have reused it. And I think that's part of this whole timeline thing is, they're looking through. Well, you know what? For those of you who don't know what Project Looking Glass is, I'm sure you do. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, Looking Glass ostensibly is weaponized remote viewing. It allows you to look at possible futures that are immediate, some of them a few hours, some of them a few days or a few months in the future. The issue is that a lot of those things are what are called Heisenberg uncertainties. They're possibilities, not probabilities, but possibilities. Now, if you make decisions based upon those probabilities, you can alter the future, and then the future becomes unpredictable again. So you have to be careful to read the future and prepare for the future, but not affect the future. It started out a mess because when they first got the system together, they thought that they could manipulate the future and call things their way. And they started having like a butterfly effect, and the whole thing fell apart. Now the amplifier that actually takes the human remote viewing capability and amplifies it, the odd thing about this signal is they can't shield it. There are people on the earth that pick that signal up. When I started writing the Birth trilogy, I wrote it as a screenplay actually in 2011, and it sat there unfunded and didn't do anything. In 2015, things started happening that were in that screenplay. So I pulled it out, read it again, and said, oh my gosh, I don't have time to make this into a movie. I got to write it into a book. So I wrote Birth, 2 Earths, 1 Race for Time. That book flowed out in a couple of months. It was done. Mm-hmm. So I was talking to George Noory about it, and he said, so when are you going to write the next one? I said, I'll probably write, next year. That's not what happened. What happened, I went to sleep that night, and the second book came right on me. And the next day I woke up and started writing. Next thing I know, 18 months later, the trilogy is finished, 1,100 pages, and it is a white knuckle ride through time into the future about the end times. And the strange thing about it is I was flowing it like it was coming to me, and I was writing as fast as I could. It's a novel, but everything in it is true. As I finished the book, I started to write the prequel to it, which is called Charm of Favor. And an individual showed up on the Chans who went by the acronym Q. Well, he started posting October 28th, and it was like he was reading my book. Everything that he was posting were things that had already happened in the chapters. Somehow I was tapping into the signal that they were amplifying with Looking Glass. And
Wow.
I can just tell you, I could see it as clear as day. I wrote as fast as I could. My hands were sore. I was writing so fast. And people that read those books, they don't call them the birth trilogy. They call it the birth journey.
Wow. Oh, okay. Now I'm gonna have to get those. I better get finished with this one so I can get all of them. Yeah, I can relate to the book thing, because my first book, the same thing happened. I wrote it. I thought I was done. I woke up the next day, wrote the second book in the day. And with this one, the people who were producing it, they needed it for a timeline, and they could give me 9 months at first, and I was like, okay, I got that. And then they called back and they were like, hey, guess what, we're actually having this big thing on this date, so if you could do it here, then we can get it, edited, all the things before this thing, we can release it at this big thing. And I was like, so she was like, so you kind of got like 3 months. And I like went from 9 months to 3 months. And then I looked at my schedule and I realized I was booked and traveling for 9 weeks of those, or 10 weeks of those 3 months. And I was like, so basically I don't have it, but however, it was days that I had. And so I told her no. And then I started going through and going back to the timeline thing, of what my own teaching was. I went back to my own notebook and looked at this timeline thing, and I called her back and I said, okay, look, I am a person of my word. I'm very conscientious of like, keeping my integrity, and I don't want to commit to things that I haven't, but I'm also open to miracles. So this is what I'm going to do. I will tell you that I will pick up tomorrow and I will write a chapter, and then I'll write a chapter, and we'll see where we are in a week, and we'll just go from there. And she was like, okay. The next day I started writing. By 11 o'clock I had several chapters, and then it was 12, and there's one I had an appointment at 4. I'll call the people and said, is there any way we can just move this to another day? And I finished the book by 11 o'clock, except for 2 chapters. So I get that. And I did feel like it was a stream of information that was just like this flood of things. And I like how you were saying about like tapping into this, because I don't know if I've thought of it as much as a sound or a tap, but I have had these things where I would get up and be inspired by something, get out and say it, and then 2 hours later find out someone at the same time got up and said the same thing. And multiple times this happened with 3 or 4 people that we would all, and I used to tease and say, well, we all must be getting in that little crack of the timeline somehow, of like somehow getting this information dispersed to us all at once. But I didn't really have you said it better. Yeah.
Well, I grew up in the church, and they used to say, many are called but few are chosen. And I realized as I was writing that book, Remembering the Future, that it's probably a misinterpretation. It's many are called but few choose. We're the ones that choose. We are never chosen against our will. We always choose. And we can choose to sit it out, or we can choose to participate. And that is when life really gets exciting.
Yeah, I mean, that I'm like having to take a little pause on that for sure. So where we are in this world right now with what's going on, I know you've had several interviews even as of late. I noticed on your schedule, you're interviewing quite a few people. What can you tell us about, like, where do you think this is going? Like, I know that's a big question.
What we're seeing in the situation with the country and the world right now, we have to understand there are big forces, and one of the forces ruled the world for 5,000 years. They controlled the whole world for 5,000 years. When America was formed, it took off in a different direction, and people grabbed rights directly from God. They didn't come from the king. They didn't come from the government. And they tried several times to crush this country and couldn't do it. It was the human drive that made the country great. So the global syndicate, I call them, this is the remnants of the darkness that has controlled this world since it cooled and man first arrived here. They wanted this world back, and they have been growing using money and using investment for about 83 years, 86 years actually, and pretty much on schedule. Everything they wanted to accomplish, they accomplished except one thing. They really wanted to crush America. They needed to get America off the world so that freedom and liberty would no longer exist. And they almost got it. Then we made a change. We started to grow again. And the people all over the world, in France and Venezuela and Germany and Hong Kong, all over the United States, we began to wake up and we began to rebel against the global syndicate's agenda of global control, climate and money and central banking and all that. We started to rebel against it. And the global syndicate realized that they were going to lose control of the whole earth. And so they, if you ever read battle planning on a military manuals, you realize you got to work with the operating environment, and then you have to state the problem clearly, and then you have to state your objectives. They had two objectives that they wanted to accomplish. Number one, they needed to clear all the streets everywhere, all over the world, of the protesters against the global syndicate. They tried everything. They gassed them, they beat them, they shot them, and nothing would stop them. They needed something so terrible and so universal that it would clear the streets of all the protesters. And the second objective is they needed to crush the Trump economy. That is what was leading the world into a new era, a new age. And this, I call it Operation Corona Scare, because the virus is just a part of it. It's not actually a killer virus. It's just a virus. Operation Corona Scare accomplished both of those objectives in 21 days without firing a shot. Now that is power. However, they didn't crush the people. They only crushed the movement. The people are still here. The energy is still here. The awakeness is still here. All the yellow vests are put away. All the protesters have left all the streets, but they're home. And the heart of the protester, the heart of the rebellion is still there. And we're going to watch it rise very shortly.
Wow. What does that mean to you? Watch it rise very shortly.
This is a rebellion of ideas, not a rebellion of weapons of war. And it is one that the global media empire, which comprises all of the press, all of the news media, all of the movie industry, all the music industry, they have been conditioning us and preparing us for decades for their agenda. But you and me and others like us with our podcasts and our ideas, we've been on the underground and we've been spreading the light all over this planet for about 4 or 5 years. And those light pockets, they cannot be quenched. And very soon, that light is going to turn up so bright that it's going to drive the darkness back into the shadows.
That is encouraging, isn't it? I know there's a lot of people who have been following Q, and different people on, shows with David Wilcock or whoever they're watching, and different things are put out there. And then they're like, well, we don't know for sure. I mean, no one knows for sure. And then we're like, okay, so what's going to happen? There's this many days of darkness. There's not darkness. We don't have darkness. Are the children being rescued? Or what's really, it's like, I think people, some of the comments that I've seen through different groups that we're in or whatever, it's like, what's really happening? Is anything happening? I don't believe anything anymore. Like, people are starting to feel a little bit like, what's the truth? What's real?
Well, sometimes you can share the truth with everybody, but sometimes you can't. And one of the things that people need to pay close attention to is the frequency of what they feel, the frequency of what's being said and who's saying it. A lot of people ask the question, well, if all this is true, if the virus isn't really as bad as you say it is, if they're just making up deaths, to make the numbers look big, why is President Trump going along with it? Why is he standing up there next to Fauci and Birx and saying, yeah, these are the experts, these are the signs, listen to them, and he's giving them power? Because he's playing it. Because he needed to reset the economy. It moved too fast. It was overinflated. The Dow was 150 times earnings, a lot of these companies. All that needed to be reset, and the Fed needed to be woven into the Treasury. That wasn't there a year ago. Now it is. It's almost done. The stitches are almost complete. Once those two are woven together, you're going to
Uh-oh. Okay, you froze on me there. You said once those two will open together, there we go. You're back.
Once those are stitched together, you're going to see some amazing things happen.
So what can you tell us about the fact that the presidential seal is off, or the flags are different, and maybe he stepped down and maybe he isn't? Like, what do you know, or what's your say on that?
I don't really know what to make of that. Sometimes the presidential seal's there, sometimes it's not. I do know certain parties, they don't display the flag at all, period. At any of their meetings, any of their conventions, any of their debates, there is no American flag. Listen to the frequency, and I don't know if you've ever been to a rally or not, but when you have 25,000 people in that room, the power is so amazing. There's so much love. There's so much.
I bawled my eyes. I bawled and bawled and bawled. I couldn't stop crying. My kids were like, "What is wrong with you, Mom?" And I'm like, "You can't feel that?"
That's the frequency. That's what they cannot stop. That's what they couldn't stop in 2016. And it's way, way more powerful now. I interviewed people that had been to over 67 rallies. And I asked them, I interviewed them in the line in Charlotte. So how's it going? What are the rallies like now? He said, they're way more powerful than they started out. When they started out, it was 9 or 10 or 15,000 people. Now it's 25,000, 30,000, 50,000, 100,000 people in New Jersey, 100,000. And that energy is just pulsating, and the earth is resonating with it. It's resonating with it. Look at the cleansing that the earth has gone through in the last 90 days. Look at the air. Look at the water. Look at the forests. Everything is vibrating with this energy.
Yeah, that's true. A lot of people are even talking about how they're not seeing chemtrails, and they're not seeing, all this other stuff too. Being in the medical field, what I hear, and I don't personally have a clinic. I work with a clinic. My clinic actually flooded in 2016, the big flood down here in the South. But I work with a lot of doctors all over the country, and what I'm hearing, not just from my own clients and patients, is, for example, just today, over the last 3 weeks, been working with people, and sometimes even years, working with people with terrible diseases. And this morning, I had 3 different of my family members of these patients call and say, hey, they went ahead, they passed. And they were surprised to find out that they were coded COVID, when they were clearly, one was cancer, one was a heart attack, and one was blood pressure stuff, and led to all these other things. And she was an older lady, and they actually didn't give her food. They denied her food for 5 days. And there was no one there to help out. She's in this hospital, and you can't have your family members there. She was calling, begging for food every day. And her family member who called me was like, what do you do? She was getting on the phone 24 hours a day, talking to doctors and nurses, saying, why aren't you feeding her? But anyway, one of them actually, who passed, her son killed himself right after, within a couple of days. And now they called this morning to say that not only did they code the mother who died of cancer or died of the heart issue, but COVID, but they coded the young man who committed suicide after his mom died. They coded it COVID, and I was just like, I'm, like I said, I'm not in a clinic. I actually just got hired to work at a new clinic the week before this all happened, and they shut down because nobody's here to talk to. I mean, the hospital that we were at isn't full. There's nobody there. They only had 2 doctors left who stayed, and they're hardly ever seeing anyone. My sister's in functional medicine, and they sent her home around here, and she had to go all the way to New Orleans, which is an hour away, and she's driving. At first they were like, hey, we need you, and then it turned out to be hey, we'll just call tomorrow and we'll see if we need you. And that let out like 2-3 weeks, and they're like, no one's here. Finally, she's been there, I think, 4 days, and all she's doing is handing out scrubs to people. Like, that's her job, and she's in functional medicine because there's not enough people even there. So, I mean, there's just so many different levels to it aggravates me getting these calls, because I'm like, why? Like, why? And that's the people who are the family members literally today were saying, why is Trump allowing this? Like, Trump even knows probably any of this stuff. I'm sure he's informed on some level, but, I think there's a lot of people who are going through this stuff, and they're just like, why so much lying about, masks or not masks? I'm not saying that it's not real. I believe it is. I had COVID in January, and it was a really rough flu, but it wasn't like they're talking about.
Yeah.
I got over it. I did everything natural. I didn't do antibiotics or anything. I did everything completely natural and was over it. Did I cough a lot? Freaking yeah, I did, more than I ever have in my life, and it felt like pneumonia. But I don't know. So what do you have to say about any of that?
3 members of our household had it. We treated it with vitamin C. It was a little rough. 5 or 6 days, we were through it. So we're all carrying the antibodies. So now we're immune. The thing about it is, when you have an operation like this and you have the global media empire that's bought into it, they're part of it, and they have to work their agenda because this is their plan. They're trying to keep the streets cleared. They're trying to keep the Trump economy crushed. And of course, what's happening is people are seeing through it now. They're realizing, this 50 or 55,000 or 60,000 deaths that they're really talking about, it's probably more like 5,000 or 6,000 actual deaths. Everyone else may have died with COVID, but not of COVID. There's a big difference. There's a motorcycle club my son rides with. One of the dads was killed on his bike about 4 weeks ago, and the death certificate just came in. It was killed in a car wreck. The death certificate came in, and it said COVID-19. Well, the family, instead of laughing, of course, they're furious because now they can't sue the driver that hit him with civil damages because the accident was not the cause of death. So now they're trying to get the death certificate changed. And there are lawsuits in all 50 states. All 50 states have lawsuits against coroners for wrongful death reporting on these certificates. It's just breaking the news now. You're going to hear a lot more about it in the next week and a half to 2 weeks. But it's going to be a huge scandal, and it is all there for a reason. Now, the reason the scandal hasn't hit yet is I don't think the administration has actually worked their plan all the way. They're letting them do this. I think you're right. Trump is aware of it, and he could have blown it all up 3 weeks ago. He did talk about it a little bit in the beginning by saying, look, all this reporting is a hoax. Well, the global media just took that and said, oh, he's saying the virus is a hoax. So he backed off of it. He already knows all this reporting is a hoax, but he's letting it play. And when the time is right, they'll make their move and everything will be set right.
Yeah, I mean, when there was like a thread of different people, because I had posted a couple things in there and said, like, these are the people from phone calls I just got today, and just this morning, actually, not even today. And everyone started piling in, well, this happened to us, and this happened to us, and this happened to us, and this happened to us. And, and one person who had the 2 family members through an accident had said, and they both put on there, that it was coded COVID. And she's like, it's like they're not even trying to hide it.
Right.
It's like, well, who wouldn't say that's not true? Like what family members, like you said, are going to just lay over and go, sure, yeah, just put that, whatever you need to do. That's cool. Totally fine. I mean, there are some people who have integrity enough to know what's right and wrong and go, why are they lying? Like, what's the point? And starting to ask those questions and going, there must be something going on.
That is the right question. That is the right question. Why are they lying? Once the answer comes to you, you'll see what's going on.
Yes. It's quite, and definitely interesting times. And where are you located? What?
I'm outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. So
Okay.
It's not that bad here. Maybe, I don't know, 1,800 cases statewide, maybe 87 people have died related to COVID, 86 or so in South Carolina. We had one individual pass away at our plant. We had about 1,000 people in our plant. He was an older guy, probably didn't get the right care. He probably had other health problems, but only one out of our town.
Yeah, we're in the South, and we just got an extension. Our governor just put an extension on for the next, it was supposed to be over at the end of the month, and now it's the 15th. So we'll see, what happens. And I'm just encouraging people to continue to do homework and study and take this time. Everyone dreamed of being able to be on vacation and be able to be at home. And here we are. It's like,
you're going to see a big difference between the states now. The states that are more liberty-minded, that want to turn the power back over to the people, and the states that want to keep everything locked down. Those economies are going to diverge in a big way in the next 60 days. Watch for it. It's a big indicator.
Really? Okay. Well, we'll be looking for that. Do you have any final words before we got up? We're wrapping up here. I know we need to know a little bit about how to connect with you too. You mentioned your class, and give us your website and how we can find you on social media.
The easiest way is just brooksagnew.com. Everything is linked to there. I have a radio program on Wednesdays and Sunday nights at 8 p.m. It is live on YouTube and on audio, so you can listen to it on your phone or watch it on your computer. All the archives are free. So we're just trying to get, as much word out as we can. All my books are there. All my public appearances are there, and the webinars are there as well. And I'm trying to make them really affordable, because I know people sometimes can't afford plane tickets and hotel and meals and all that, and travel and time off work. So we do it on a Saturday. Everybody can attend. It's 2 classes. Everyone can finish. And then I'll also give one-on-one if people want to help, need help putting business plans together, or pro formas, or a patent application, or things like that.
Wow. And is that recorded too for people who may not be able to be there live, or how does that work?
It is recorded for the people who are in the class. I have not yet put together a set of recordings for people who don't want to be there live. I'm working on it, but I'm going to give a few more live classes, get the membership up a little bit higher, and then I'll talk about doing some pre-recorded classes. People like the interaction a little bit in a live class. Yes, I totally agree with that. Is that energy part too. And that was my hope for doing this interview too, but with everyone using, my 11-year-old and my 10-year-old are using Zoom just to do their video games, to talk to each other. I think the Zoom bandwidth has just been so crazy when we try to do any of the interviews here lately to get 500 people on a call at the same time. It was messing up with the technology, and I was like, you know what? This is your time. This is my time. Let's just record it. We'll send it out. And so, yeah. Thank you so much. I'll be back, and that would be super cool. Maybe we can have a part 2. And definitely you guys connect with him, get his information, get his books. I don't know what the best one you would suggest to start. This is the one that I started with. It's a good one to start with. And remember, all those books are in audio. And if you buy the paperback or the Kindle version of them, I will give you the audiobook for free. So if you're not a good reader, don't worry about it. I read it for you.
That's awesome. I like that, especially like moms out there right now when you're at home trying to work and or take care of kids and house and all that. This is perfect, or driving to work.
Yeah, you
But
can
yeah,
listen to it while you drive to work.
yeah. So for those of you who are trying to get in touch with our interviews that are up and coming, you can go to swiftfire.org. You can also go to YouTube. I will have this recording out, but I have a few that are upcoming. We have Barbara Evans. We're teaching on sacred geometry, which is fun. I just did something with Laura Eisenhower and champion boxer David Rodriguez. We have Corey Good coming up tomorrow, and we'll be recording with that. And we also have Mary Rodwell, who I'm excited about. We have her confirmed for next week. So we have a lot of things coming up. You guys just stay on YouTube and subscribe and make sure you're getting all that information, and definitely connect with the radio show that these guys are doing. I like his hat. I noticed it right away, the Space Force. So anyway, thanks you guys, and thank you again. Bless you so much, and we will talk soon.
Thank you.
Talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. All right, bye-bye.